Hi pal, greetings from your sleep tale. You can call me Stephen Dalton. It is a wonderful honor for me to be the voice you hear before you go to sleep tonight, since I am an Irish storyteller. I'm continuing a series tonight that began with love letters on a train and progressed to love on the sea. This show centers on a young couple who fall in love via letters, travel across the ocean, and eventually get married. They end up in India. To listen to this, you don't need to have heard the previous two. Every story is different, and I sincerely hope you enjoy exploring James and Clara's lovely world. Just one little bit. Supporting me on Patreon is an option if my work is beneficial to you. Below this video is the link. The relaxation session will take a few minutes before tonight's sleep story, so let's get started. From 10 relaxation to 1, I will count down. And let yourself let go. More and more as I do. 10. Feel the support of the floor, the bed underneath you, or whichever surface you're lying on this evening. Feel the stability of the soil, our home, beneath all of that. The earth provides us with unwavering support. See if you can now. Relax a bit more as you become conscious of that sense of support. Relieving stress. Now letting go a bit more. 9. Pay attention to your body. You're still holding where? Where is the tension? You may experience pain. Perhaps it's in your lower legs and feet, throughout your chest, abdomen, and thighs. Perhaps you are similar to me. Your hands carry a great deal of anxiety. Or in front of you, try letting go of the tension. Now, we may reduce the stress just by being aware of it. 8. You're secure. Tonight, let my voice serve as a companion and a pillar of safety. Be assured that my voice will only ever lead you to secure locations. And accept that reality, that sense of confidence, so that you can now relax a bit more. 7. The day is over. Whatever will be, will be. Whatever has been, has been. Recognize that whatever thoughts you may be having are simply that. Do not evaluate them favorably or unfavorably. Recognize that you are not them. They are a sign that you are human. You can see them when they get there, but you don't have to follow them. See them leave, drifting away like clouds in a starry sky or leaves on a river illuminated by the moon. 6. Now is your time. Now is your moment. Rest is something you deserve. Everyone does. Thus, keep this in mind while you go further and deeper into your sleep tonight. Like everyone else, you deserve this relaxation. 5. You are at peace. It's always there. It is always there and always a friend. It simply awaits discovery and sensation. Tonight, see where you may find tranquility. For let's be a bit thankful now. Appreciation for the small things in this peaceful moment. For your shelter this evening, for your body's respiration. Step 3. Start using your creativity. Watch now as a magnificent 19th century ship arrives in India. The temperature is warm. James and Clara are among the audience in this lovely scene. 2. Making another check-in with your body. Your body has put in a lot of effort today. Let it sit for a while. And one that lets go entirely. As I tell you the sleep story. For tonight, the world altered when they got off the boat. The air was spicy, heated, and full of aromas. Unknown. Someone was frying something in oil somewhere nearby. Incense floated farther away like smoke from an unseen fire. With a sort of golden defiance, the light hit every surface as birds screamed out from the roofs, as though it would not soften. In England, nothing moved the way it did. The sounds were all the same. The colors even appeared more vibrant. Half out of love and half to keep herself balanced, Clara held on to James's arm. The dock was a flurry of activity. She could not yet grasp the language used by the men in loose cotton shirts who shouted directions while lifting crates. Children were running between heaped carts, and goats were tethered to posts. with fruit, and above it all, a son they had never seen before. Large, brazen, and commanding, James remained silent. With his heart pounding fiercely in his chest, he moved through it in silent wonder while holding her hand securely. They had dreamed and written about India, but this was unprepared for. The earth had a distinct scent, damp and ancient and alive with life. It seemed as though they had landed on a planet with more ancient laws rather than a nation. Deeper. And not fully understood yet, before dusk they departed the city. They landed because of their bravery. Past birds that screamed like instruments and trees that leaned as though listening, the road ascended gradually. The cacophony diminished with each mile, and they arrived at it just as the sky's light was starting to fade. Clara let out a gasp as she saw the silent, broad, green valley. The hills on either side appeared to drape like arms around the pale, meandering river that flowed through it. From the grass, fireflies emerged. Above, the stars had already begun to awaken. For as long as they could, they would remain there. A house with white walls, soft carpets, and wooden shutters that swayed softly in the breeze had been set, up open to the air. The sound of the river would lull them to sleep at night. They would sit next to each other in the morning and observe the fog dissipating. They had been unprepared for this. It was more than just lovely. It went beyond. All this time, they had been riding toward it. They lived in silence in the days that followed. The only other person in the valley was a gardener who came early to sweep the ver and tend to the hibiscus. Clara had a notebook open on the table next to her, noting small details she observed as they ate outside under the frangipani tree. The way the grass was illuminated, when the birds stopped, James drew next to her before taking off. Her hands and the house alternately. They didn't talk much about the train, the ship, the wedding on the boat's deck, or the voyage behind them. Now it all felt so distant, as though it had happened to different people. Every night, they sat close to one another and observed the sky's changing hues. It was unnecessary to speak. It was too full of beauty than a boy carrying a letter. Came barefoot on the walk on the 7th morning. Despite his lack of English, he bowed once and waited for James to come back with a penny. The corner of the envelope was ripped and smeared. The writing, however, was clearly slanted, stiff, sharp, and unambiguous. James read it once while standing and once while seated. Even before he looked up, Clara could tell something had changed by the way he looked. "I have to see this man," James remarked. "My father had been friends with him. He's called for me." His thumb rested on the crease of the letter for a second longer than was required when he folded it. 3 days via rail to Delhi. Clara gave a nod. She didn't inquire if he would accompany her. She was aware already. She got up, gave him a quick peck on the cheek, and went inside to get a little case ready for him. James was still standing. When she came back, in the branches, the birds continued to call. Already, the sun was rising higher in the sky. The following morning, before the sun had risen, he departed. The sky over the hills was the light blue of faded linen, and the air was still cold. He led Clara to the path where the boy had initially been seen. James had a scarf wrapped softly at his throat, and the satchels hung over his shoulder. They didn't say anything. It was the friendly, unforced silence they had become accustomed to. He turned and glanced back at her at the bend in the walkway. She had halted some steps behind. In the early light, the garden gleamed dimly. Hair was unpinned, and she was barefoot. That was how he wanted to remember her. He flashed her a half-smile, one that was full of love, gratitude, and uncertainty. Then he turned once more and continued walking. The tiny train station was partially encased in vines. A slender man in a cup sat half asleep next to a bell, and a lone platform ran alongside a corroded track. James boarded the unexpectedly arriving train and grabbed a seat facing the window. The metal armrest of the wooden bench felt cold too. His hand, He waited for the world to move while pressing his forehead against the glass. Reaching into the side of his suitcase, he looked for the envelope he had packed as the train began to move away. Rather, his hand touched a square of folded paper. Clara knew he would find her writing stowed away. He had not yet opened it. As the train passed pastures, he held it in his hand. And sluggish cows, red-flowered trees, and people strolling along the dusty walks in vivid stars. When the time was right, he would read it. Clara stayed at the garden for a while after. Returning home, on the stone basin by the steps, a small bird had landed and was dipping its head to drink. She remained still, in order to avoid disturbing it. Finally, she turned and made her way back inside carefully. Already, the rooms had a new vibe. Emptier in areas, lighter in others. She opened her notepad, sat near the window, and made herself a cup of tea. Before the day was out, she would write to him once more. When James opened the letter, the train had been in motion for about an hour. He waited for the surrounding land to be cleared. The compartments surrounding him had ceased to move, and fields transformed to vast expanses of sky and dust. He carefully unfolded the page by running his thumb along the fold. The gentle angles and pauses in Clara's calligraphy, which she used when speaking, were now familiar. "I won't be by your side when you read this, James. Read this, James. And I already detest that. I'll be in the garden, watching the birds and listening for your footsteps, knowing that they won't arrive today, tomorrow, or the day after. While you're on the train, I am aware that you had to leave. You would never be asked to stay by me. However, I feel like I've had something taken away from me. Something significant, cozy, and recognizable. When you pack, you are very silent. I observed you folding clothing and a man performing a task. I also kept quiet since I was afraid I might start crying if I talked. But I want to express everything. Now that you're gone and I'm holding the paper, I would want to state that spending these days with you has truly felt like the start of my life. That this is the most peaceful I've ever experienced. Not on the ship, when everything seemed borrowed and not before you. However, I wake up in this odd and lovely world and recognize myself by the way your hand touches mine before either of us says a word. I didn't know I could love something as much as I love you. Do you recall yesterday when we were standing by the river and you peered out over the water as though you had seen something but said nothing? I didn't inquire about it. I didn't have to. I also sensed it. This place has a certain quality that makes the quiet feel sacred. And when I'm with you, I feel like we're a part of something positive and old. I will thus remain here, wait for you, and write to you each day. I want to stroll with you even now, when you're away, not because I want to make up for the distance. In these lines, I want you to hear my voice. As you hold this page, I want you to feel. How much do you own of me? If you have to, return slowly, but return. I would never want to know a world without you in it. Clara, always. Before he could sit quietly next to her, James read the letter and then reached into the inside pocket of his coat for the pencil he had used to write to Clara before they were married. The train rocked occasionally, and the paper he used was rougher than he preferred. He didn't wait for better circumstances, though. He steadied his fingers, placed the notepad on his knee, and started. I'm not sure what I anticipated reading. In your letter, Clara, I guess it's something sweet. A few phrases to cheer me up. But instead, I came across you entirely. I was gripped by your remarks. I nearly lost my location. When I raised my head, the train was still shifting as the trees outside continued to slink by. However, I had the impression that I had stepped off somewhere and discovered you standing there, holding out your hand. I already miss you. Not the way I had anticipated, just as I miss water when I'm thirsty. I miss you too. Or how, when I was too small to comprehend why my father wasn't there, I would miss him. There's a sensation in the bones. Not melancholy, but a feeling that something is amiss and will only be resolved when I am by your side once more. On the train, there's a woman on the other side. She's older. Her basket is filled with green items, maybe herbs or leaves. Just now, she gave me a smile as though she knew I was writing to a loved one. She nodded in return, and for a little moment, I felt nearly like a normal husband. It's a man who has a place to return to, not one who is traveling. You are that location. I hope today is a quiet day in the garden. I hope the river is flowing at a leisurely pace. When you're by yourself, I hope you're keeping your hands occupied and that they're warm. Refrain from pressing too many blossoms. Put some away for when I get back. Together, we shall stroll about and select them. James, yours in everything. After putting down the pencil, he folded the paper once again. He held it in his lap, lightly stroking the edge with his thumb. The basket-wielding woman grinned once again. Even so, she hadn't been observing him. Outside, the light was shifting and the sky was starting to cloud. James closed his eyes, reclined, and visualized the sound of the river beneath their home. He merely wanted to fall asleep to that sound. By the time Clara lit the candle, the stars had already gone out. It wasn't even necessary for her. There was enough moonlight, but she felt comforted by the little brightness. With a writing board resting on her knees and a blanket wrapped under her shoulders, she sat on the cold floor. The river flowed. As usual, somewhere in the meadow. Despite thinking about James a lot throughout the day, she had not written anything. She had eaten from the same spot he had used, sat for a time by the hibiscus tree, listening to the wind blowing through its leaves and watched the shadows change on the garden path. Now, though something was pressing inside of her in the silence of the nighttime. Not precisely hunger or dread, but the need to express her feelings before they faded. Something's in the air tonight, my James. There was a certain stillness, but not the typical type. It has the sensation of a pause between two things, as if one thing has come to an end and another is about to start. Don't worry, I don't mean anything bad. Feels more like the earth is becoming softer beneath my feet. In the same way that earth loosens before giving way to a seed, it does not vanish. I'm not sure what Delhi has to offer. An elderly man in a peaceful room, maybe. The sort of talk that doesn't affect anything. Maybe not, though. I believe you may be experiencing or seeing something that isn't yet named. And I believe that I will experience it as well, whatever it is. I was able to witness a heron move through the reeds when I was sitting by the river today. It went so slowly, it flew off so abruptly that I feared it could be dozing out on its feet. I chuckled out loud. I feel that way tonight. I'm half asleep. However, I already feel like something is lifting. When you're ready, return. But return in a different way. If that is what you are being asked to do, Clara, I will always be here. Pressing the letter between the pages of her notepad, she folded it. She wasn't certain whether or not she would send it. In the morning, she would make a decision. Gazing up at the stars, she leaned back against the wall. Her breath caught because the sky was so vast. The feeling was coming, but she was unable to identify it. Something lovely. It was hot in Delhi. Carts rattled on stones worn smooth by years of travel, and houses leaned over small streets. James showed up in the late afternoon and walked silently to the house. The rickshaw driver had recognized the location without hesitation because it had been meticulously written. Low and square, the house was painted a pale yellow that had long since faded. James was greeted at the gate by a boy who showed him around a tiny garden with crumbling, parched earth. Only a solitary neem tree leaned over a bench. There were no blooms. A wooden door was gently knocked on by the child, who slipped away before it opened. The man who responded appeared to be far older than James had anticipated. Not all of his hair was white. Black strands were visible close to the ears. His eyes were steady and black, and his clothing was clean but too big. He offered it freely, yet he smiled as if it cost him something. "You've come," he said to James. James gave a nod. "You wrote." He was motioned inside by the man. They sat together in a dimly lit room with heavy curtains. Above them, a fan shook softly, its pattern like breath. They brought tea. For a time, they both remained silent. The man then put both hands on his knees and leaned forward. "Your father died 6 weeks ago," he stated. "He believed you could already be on the road, so he said, 'I'm sorry you weren't told sooner.' He didn't want anything sent." He was correct. James cast his gaze downward. Tea had not yet touched the cup. There was a widening silence, but no surprise. At the end, I was with him. "I'm not afraid," the man said. Even though he had never met Clara, he talked about you and her a lot. I appreciated that he stated, "James is steady. He waits for things to speak before answering." James gave a small smile. "I might be heading east," he added. He assumed you would. He also inquired as to whether I wrote one note only. No specifics. James gave a slow nod in agreement. "He'll come if he's ready, and if he's not, he won't." I was prepared. The man got up and walked to a tiny cupboard across the room. After carefully opening it, he brought out a stack of weakly bound sheets tied with a fading green ribbon. He left this behind. I haven't read it. I had to make a vow to him. James grabbed it and grasped it with both hands. The edges of the paper were soft from use. It was strangely warm. The man sat back down and added, "There's something else. I received a letter from your wife. Only a few lines. It came just one day ahead of you." James gave it a quick glance. "She must have been aware." The man went on. "Perhaps not precisely, but sufficient. She was correct when she said, 'I think you'll know what to give James because he's the type of man who listens without interrupting.' Yes, I do." James sat still, held the pile of pages on his lap. He received a lengthy, weary smile from the man. "This house no longer has any urgent matters. You can take it with you or read it here." What you should do next was not stated by him. "Let him go slowly," was all he murmured. The light through the curtain had become dimmer. Someone outside was using long, steady strokes to sweep the street. The world continued. James got up and gave the man a handshake. They remained silent. There was no reason to. He stepped back into the heat as the door softly closed behind him and the street noise resumed. He held the pages to his chest. Shortly after sunset, the train left Delhi. James took a seat near the window, the stack of pages lying unopened on his lap. It was almost empty in the compartment. With his head resting on his mother's shoulder, the boy on the other side of the aisle slept. Behind them, the city faded away in dim lights and far-off horns, and the wheel rhythm became almost a thought. He still hadn't turned the pages. All he had done was hold them and feel their weight, as though the words were already a part of him and were just waiting to be remembered, not read. He had remembered the man's house because of the silence, not because of its specifics. At that moment, he couldn't help but think of his father. It was becoming darker outside. Once again, the hills rose gently against the sky. Beyond them, the river meandered silently through the valley. Awaiting, Clara was also waiting. Now he could practically see her, his love. He needed her in this moment, but he knew he would see her shortly. He gazed down at the stack of letters once more, and then cautiously he began to untie the ribbon.